It's over, DeSantis bros. This is the day the DeSantis campaign died and was laid to rest. This weekend is the Iowa State Fair. All the Republican presidential candidates, of course, are in Iowa. The Democrat presidential candidates should be there too, but the Democrats have decided to abandon the Iowa caucus, which is unfortunate. I did find it, it's more interesting when you have all of the candidates. Now Iowa, you think of it just as now a Republican primary state. The Iowa caucus no longer has any relevance to the Democratic Party. But the Republicans have got enough shenanigans going on to make Iowa even more entertaining than it has been in past years. And so they really don't need the Democrats. It'd be nice to see RFK Jr. there. I think RFK Jr. would get a great reception at the Iowa caucus, at the Iowa State Fair. And ordinarily, they would do a straw poll at the Iowa State Fair. But sadly, since 2016, I think they've stopped doing it, and they're probably never going to do it again, which is sad. It's a fun, it doesn't mean anything, the Iowa straw poll, but it's always fun. It's an early campaign season staple. But even without the straw poll, I think it's clear what the results would have been, just based on the very pitiful videos we see coming out. Well, triumphant for some, pitiful for others. I think that a soon-to-be iconic moment of the 2024 election cycle, and excuse me if you can hear air blowing in the background, that's the air conditioning. I normally turn off the air conditioning during recording so that nobody can hear it blowing, but it is so hot today in Florida that I'm not turning off the air. I don't care if you can hear the air blowing in the background. My audio sucks anyway. So what do I care if you hear some wind noises in the background? I shouldn't say that. I don't want to be mean. I do care about the audience, but not so hot. But I don't care so much that I'm willing to let my house get up to 85 degrees while I'm recording. Anyway, the iconic moment that I alluded to was DeSantis grilling burgers, like a real American, in summer. What American doesn't like to grill burgers outside in the heat when they're at the state fair? That's what everybody does. You eat fried Twinkies, chicken on a stick, and you grill some burgers for the voters. You kiss some babies. I remember when Ellen Page confronted Ted Cruz at the Iowa State Fair in 2016. It was one of the last times we ever saw Ellen Page as Ellen Page. There I am getting off topic again. I think that the heat is making me delirious, and that's saying something, considering I have a pretty good tolerance for the heat. But boy, we need some rain. I don't want to get on here and talk about the weather like some old man, but it's hard to ignore. It's affecting my performance, which is not good. The wife will not be happy with that. The air conditioning's working overtime and it still can't keep up. We're I think it's still 2 degrees over what it's set at. It can't hold the temperature, can't get the house cooled down. And so I'm constantly losing my train of thought. Back to DeSantis grilling his burgers. The D-man was trying to ham it up with the peeps at the Iowa State Fair. A man of the people on the ground wearing his, it kind of looked like a Columbia shirt. It was a short sleeve button down. I don't know, maybe it wasn't a Columbia shirt. Maybe it was a bowling shirt. Bowling shirt would be too hot. Columbia shirt would make sense for the State Fair. Nice and cool walking around. Anyway, Ronnie D had a big crowd of people around him. It looks, if you have the sound turned off, you think, gee, this DeSantis guy, people want to see him. They want one of his burgers. Everyone wants to get up close and interact with America's governor. His campaign's going really well. But then you go on Twitter and you click the the little speaker icon that has a slash through it, and you turn the sound on. The slash disappears. The speakers come alive. And what do you hear blaring in stereo? We want Trump. We want Trump. Or no, it was we love Trump. I'm sorry. It was we love Trump. Not even we want Trump. We love Trump. That's what this massive crowd of people were chanting at Desantis as he was standing there, flipping burgers, which might be an unfortunate image, because I think that the meme makers on the Trump team, if they have any bit of creativity left, the carpe diems of the world, they should do some kind of AI edit of DeSantis flipping burgers at McDonald's with people chanting "We love Trump" from the dining room, because that's where DeSantis is headed. He better work on flipping burgers, because that's all he's going to be good for after he gets absolutely wrecked in this campaign. And as Trump's plane flew overhead, as the specter of Trump Force One blacked out Ron DeSantis' son, and I mean son S-U-N, it was as if his entire campaign just faded to black. And it's when I saw that, it was at that moment that I knew this was the end. You don't come back from this. Iowa was the one state where DeSantis had a chance. Even if DeSantis was very well received in Iowa, even if he won Iowa with a pretty decent lead, let's say 55%. If he got over 50% in Iowa, that doesn't mean that he was going to still make a good run against Trump. It didn't mean that at all, but it meant he had a chance. But now what are we seeing? We're seeing quite the opposite. Trump has the commanding lead in Iowa. DeSantis is a laughingstock. The people at the state fair, ordinary Iowans from all across the state coming to Des Moines to eat fried Twinkies, chicken on a stick, and cheeseburgers grilled by DeSantis himself. They reject him. They reject his message. They reject everything he stands for just because he's the one standing for it. Evangelical Christians are embracing abortion because DeSantis is pro-life. That's how much people hate him now. He's actually turning Republican voters against conservative policies because that's how far they want to distance themselves from his existence. His good policies in the state of Florida are backfiring now on us and the rest of the country because DeSantis himself is so personally unpopular. I keep saying this, but I keep doing these videos about how, this time DeSantis is finished. But I keep having to make more because he keeps sinking further and further. And what I would hope is that this ends rather quickly. The money burns out. He goes back to being a good governor, and hopefully his personal reputation can be rebuilt, and we can salvage the policies themselves. Because if people now love abortion, evangelical Christian Iowans, the people, the center of the anti-abortion movement, these are the vanguards against abortion. If they now love abortion and embrace abortion because they hate DeSantis and love Trump, because Trump, even though he's the guy who ended Roe v. Wade, this is what we hear. Trump is all about abortion now. This is a problem. And so, before, you could have made the argument, okay, well, gee, the only thing that DeSantis can hurt by running, it doesn't, it's not going to change anything except, his own career. He's taking a chance entirely for himself. It doesn't affect anybody else. DeSantis can run, and people can either reject him or embrace him. Either way, he's the only one who's really affected negatively. But I'm starting to see that differently. And no, I have not embraced the crackpot theory that Trump is being prosecuted because DeSantis is in the race. That's ridiculous. Anyone who's saying that should not be taken seriously. And I'm very sad that there are people who I respect who are taking such an absurd stance. But it's bad analysis. It's not logical. It's just, I don't know, wishful thinking? I mean, what else can you call it? People really don't want Trump to be prosecuted. I understand that. That's a good reason to be upset. That's even a good reason to say, you know what, I'm going to vote for Trump alone just because they're persecuting him this way. That's perfectly reasonable. But to say that there would be no Trump prosecution, that they all of a sudden would not want to get Trump if DeSantis was out of the race, it doesn't even follow. If DeSantis wasn't a potential alternative to Trump, I would think that they would even more want to get Trump out of the race. Because they would say, gee, it's clear, Trump, there's no alternative to Trump. He's going to be the Republican nominee. No, they can't nominate anyone else. There's no one else running. We have to take out Donald Trump. I would almost think if DeSantis were running and DeSantis were winning, then there would be less of a chance that they would prosecute Donald Trump because they would see him as less of a threat if he was losing to DeSantis. But the fact that DeSantis is running and losing, it's the same as if he wasn't running at all because he's not a threat to Trump's nomination. There is no possibility that at this point that anyone is nominated at the Republican National Convention of 2024 for president other than Donald Trump. We are down to picking VPs at this point. You know, at this stage, you wonder, is it going to be Vivek? Is it going to be, what's her name? I already forgot. Carrie Lake. Both of them, very strong contenders. That's what they've been running for from the beginning. I think Byron Donalds probably wants his, he wants to throw his hat into the ring too. I think he clearly is interested in being Trump's VP. And so Trump has a deep bench. Hell, even Matt Gaetz. I don't know if Matt Gaetz is actively trying to become, put himself in the limelight to be Trump's VP. But I think that Matt Gaetz would certainly be, completely gung-ho if he was asked. I don't think he's a contender. I think it's really the first two, and then Donalds, I keep seeing more and more of him with Trump. I think that Byron Donalds condemning the Florida State school curriculum, the anti-CRT stuff, and coming in and saying, hey, we really need to bring DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion back to the schools. We need to fully adopt the mainstream interpretation of Black history in America. I feel like that was 100% a favor to Trump to try and just, attack DeSantis, which, it's a strategic decision. I'm not going to completely discount Byron Donalds as an individual because of it. If he's trying to become vice president, I can understand how he would say some stupid stuff to try and impress Trump. Plenty of people have done it before him, and, people have done that and gone on to do good things. I can't name any offhand, but more often than not, it was people who were saying things to impress Trump who then went on to do terrible things. But, either way, whether they did good things or bad things was their choice at the end of the day. It was irrespective of the stupid things that they said to try and impress Trump. So anyway, DeSantis is a non-entity. I think at this point, he's descended to a similar status as Mike Pence. Whereas Mike Pence was considered to be, a good conservative governor, except for to the religious right. The religious right didn't like Mike Pence from the beginning because he stabbed them in the back. But other than the religious right, most people, average Republicans just thought, oh yeah, Mike Pence, he's a good Republican governor. I've heard of him. He seems like a stand-up guy. And he maintained that reputation throughout the 4 years that he was vice president. And then on January 6th, he threw that all out the window. And he has continued to drive his reputation into the ground. And even though I think Ron DeSantis is much better than Mike Pence, he's not comparable. I think that in people's heads, they see them now as pretty similar. These are just Republican governors that, want to stab Trump and get rid of him. And so that's where we're at. And if DeSantis can't shake off, if he can't find a way to straddle the line, unlike Vivek was able to portray himself as being both pro-Trump while being in the presidential race by attacking Ron DeSantis. And on a certain level, I think people understand, yeah, Vivek is running for vice president. think everybody kind of sees that. They don't see him as someone who, is trying to go out and beat Trump. Whereas DeSantis, what was his role from the very beginning in this campaign? He's the anti-Trump. He is the only viable option if you want to take down Trump. And so all of the bad blood that comes with that was injected directly into his veins. And so simply put, Ron DeSantis is a toxic brand now. It'll take a long time for him to rebuild that. Think about what happened to poor Mark, what was his name? Great guy. The governor of South Carolina who cheated on his wife. I know, isn't that hilarious? Politicians used to get canceled for cheating. And anyway, he had to go away for a long time, and then he came back as a pretty decent congressman. He was very, he very much put thought into what he did. He was a thoughtful person. He was clearly not just like a hack politician. That was not why he came back. It was not fun for him, his experience in politics. He didn't want to get back into it for that reason. He clearly, when he came back in the House, was there to be a good legislator and to try and, actually do good by his constituents. And of course, Trump ran him out on a rail because I think he opposed the CARES Act, or maybe he was out even before that. They might have ran him out in 2018. Yeah, you know what they did? Because they replaced him with Nancy Mace. And I think, wasn't Nancy Mace like a defense contractor, or her husband was a defense contractor, something like that? It was because Mark, whatever his name, he was not, ironically enough, it's because he wasn't hawkish enough. And he, was not big enough on military spending. That's why they got rid of him. But that's not really relevant to this. What I'm talking about is how he was able to rebuild his reputation from the time that he left office in disgrace as governor and was able to come back as a congressman. DeSantis could have a similar path. But unfortunately for him, he might just have to accept, his status like Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz will never be the man that he was in 2015. Ted Cruz is broken. Marco Rubio, he's been able to hang on. He's been able to move on from 2016. Ted Cruz hasn't. Ted Cruz is a shell. And I think that DeSantis might be more in the Ted Cruz mold than the Rubio mold. I think that DeSantis clearly wants it too bad, wants it too much. And that reminds people more of Cruz. Rubio, it was kind of, he was in, and then once he was out, he's like, yeah, I'm out now. I'm going to go back to doing my thing. And Rubio's been doing his thing. So, anyway, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.